From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode 160. Today's show is brought to you by Squarespace, FreshBooks, and Bombfell. My name is Myke Hurley. I am joined by Mr. Stephen Hackett. Hello, Stephen Hackett.
Hello, Michael Hurley.
And the man of the hour, Mr. Federico Vicici. Ciao, Federico.
Hello, Michael Hurley. How are you?
Good, good. I wondered if you two were going to bring that up again. Turns out, yes. Yes, you are.
You have a bunch of other names that I don't remember. David, James.
No, you remember them perfectly. Good work.
Right.
Oh, yeah?
Michael David James.
Okay.
Proud of you. Very proud of you.
Mikey DJ Hurley is how I remember it.
Yep,
Yep,
that's me.
DJ.
That's me, kids.
Mikey DJ.
So we have an action-packed show today. We have two whole product categories that we didn't get any time to discuss last week. And iOS 11. So buckle up, everybody.
Yeah, who cares about that? Should we talk about iOS 11?
Are you not? How have you not like filled up everything that you have to say on this so far? Like
exactly. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I can't believe that you would rush to talk about iOS 11. Surely, I mean, well, I guess of all of us, I am the one who has spoken about iOS 11 the most. But we can get onto that a little bit later, because for the past 2 weeks in our document, Stephen has had a little note which just says, follow-up, update on Stephen's move to Spotify. Now, before I let you tell whatever the story is, Stephen, about whatever you've done, I would like to make a guess over what I think that you've done. So the first link in the show notes today will be what I think Stephen may potentially be up to. So you guys can click that if you want.
I'm going to open this link.
Did you buy an MP3 player purely dedicated to your playing Spotify music? There's an MP3 player called the Myke, I believe, that can integrate with Spotify to do this.
What? I had no idea such a thing existed.
Yeah.
Okay, so
orange. I like orange.
So is Myke correct? Or should I guess first?
Hashtag Myke is not right.
Okay. So I'm going to say, so you've been teasing a major piece of follow-up about Spotify.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that you are trying Google Play Music now.
No, I'm
okay.
not. Y'all are 0 for 2.
Okay.
All right.
So I have been trying Spotify. I talked about how I was discovering all the good things about it, like everyone else did in 2009. You can play on your phone, and then your computer knows where you were, and you can use your phone as a remote for your other devices. It's all very clever. I went through and added all my music to Spotify. I downloaded all my music on my phone, so for offline playback. Because even though I have a bunch of data on AT&T, I don't want to stream if I don't have to, right? And so have it all locally. And then I ran into the problem. And it is a problem before I can hear you writing your emails to me right now. It may be just me. This could just be a problem that I have with my particular setup. But my car stereo has Bluetooth, and it works pretty well, actually. It puts the artist and album stuff up on the screen. I can use voice control to call people on the phone. It's not Siri hands-free. It's like the basic Toyota one, but it integrates with the iPhone. It's a pretty decent system for, a car that's now 3 years old. But the problem I have with this stereo is that it's not particularly loud. And I'm not talking about, blowing my eardrums out, right? Like I'm not that guy at the stoplight. But Spotify seems to, for whatever reason, have a lower volume over Bluetooth than anything else. So if I'd be playing music in Spotify, I have to turn it up a little bit, and then I go to Overcast or go to the radio, and those would be way louder. And it's a small thing, but something that really rubbed me the wrong way. So I was thinking about this, thinking about what to do, and I came to a conclusion that even surprised me. And I went to my Mac, and I option clicked on iTunes, and I started a new iTunes library, and I signed up for Apple Music and enabled iTunes Match.
What?
That was...
Hang on a second. Wait.
You of all people?
Those
Apple
steps,
Music?
I'm confused. Wait, you started a new iTunes library.
So So I tried Apple Music when it first came out. I used to use iTunes Match, and I had a lot of problems in the past with iTunes Match, basically like destroying my library. And so I started like with a clean library, like no music, imported the stuff that I wanted, and then matched the rest of it. And that was a process of a couple of days, just kind of doing it in the background, but it totally worked. I have all my music now. It's all matched. I've got Apple Music on my phone. I even did the trick of creating a playlist that everything I wanted locally and downloaded that playlist, which is a great shortcut. So you don't have to like tap through 1,000 albums and download them individually. And I've got to say, a couple weeks into it, I'm really happy with it. Who knew?
All right, let me just check something real quick.
Who knew?
I said 2 weeks, didn't I? Like 0 to 2 weeks before you.
I don't know. We'd have to go to the tape.
But I think like the wording may be a bit sketchy, right? As to whether it was like leaving Spotify or going
or
back. I probably
music.
said going, but I think the argument was whether you would go back or not.
Right,
but still,
which I haven't.
2 weeks.
But it is a change.
So I mean, I give it another 2 weeks until you leave Apple Music for something else.
So this is my phase 2 of this, and this is where I need your help and the help of the listeners. My wife and I share an Apple ID for purchasing. We have for 15 years. So anytime I buy an album or anytime she buys an album or an app or whatever, we use the same Apple ID. And yes, that may be stealing or whatever, but Apple lets you do it. That's how we do it. We have separate iCloud accounts for all of our other stuff. I did this with our shared Apple ID because that's where all of our purchased music is. And a lot of stuff in my iTunes over the years has been purchased and I wanted access to it all. But now I'm kind of thinking that my wife may enjoy Apple Music as well because she always has the problem that the kids want to listen to something and she bought it, but she didn't sync it to her phone and then she has trouble downloading it again. I thought this may just be easier. But I don't know how to go about this because we share an ID for purchasing and I don't want to necessarily share an Apple Music library with her. More importantly, I don't think she wants to share one with me. And so I'm curious as to what I do there. Do I just set a new one up for her and just add stuff?
What about
don't
the
worry
Apple
about the
Music
purchases?
family thing?
That's the most confusing webpage I've ever read.
Okay.
And I have read every single page in the KBase. I need to sit down and look through it. Because the family stuff, and I'm not sure I want to do that with everything else. Like I may just end up setting an Apple Music library up under her iCloud account, and anything purchased she could just have access to via Apple Music, I guess. So it may not be that big of a deal, but I think that it could be. I think she may enjoy having access to everything in iTunes all the time. So yeah, it's actually like it's been great. It was super smooth to match everything. You know, I left my phone plugged in and everything downloaded overnight, and it's been really solid. Like the UI is not ideal. I kind of like Spotify's UI better, but I can talk to Siri and it controlled the music, which was something I gave up going to Spotify, which is nice, especially in the car. So far, I'm pretty happy with it.
Turns out that family plans require family sharing, which might not be something you want to do.
That's a whole like can of worms I'm not sure I want to do. So I may just sign her up for her own plan and just match everything. So yeah, that's there's that. So
well, welcome
that's the follow-up.
to September 2015.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think it was actually June 2015, like June 30.
So it launched early,
even
didn't
before.
It? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't realize they kept the bubbles interface. So like tap the albums you like, tap the artists you like from Beats Music. I'd forgotten all about that.
That was a nice onboarding experience.
Also, it's a super fun UI because you can like flick them around. It's fun. So I did the same thing on my iPad. I signed in. I have just a playlist I called like for local and just music that I know I want downloaded and just download that playlist on my iPad as well. And it's been really solid. Even in the beta, like I haven't had any real issues with it. So there you go. Apple Music. Who knew?
Wow.
Should we move on?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to talk about Apple Music today.
I know. That's why the sub point, which you did not read on the air, in all capital letters, I wrote, things have taken a turn over here, guys. And quiet turn they have. So anyways, last week we spoke about the Apple event. We're going to wrap that up today. But we had asked listeners for the source of the Steve Jobs quote, and we didn't hear anything, like no emails, no tweets, because turns out Gruber has a story. It was a internal like Apple meeting or hands-on of some type that audio was recorded from. And so it wasn't public. That's why we didn't recognize it. But I think it's pretty cool. I have rewatched the keynote since last recording, and this section of the keynote still like totally stands up. Like I feel as good and warm and fuzzy about it as I did the day after.
I don't rewatch keynotes anymore. I stopped doing that a few years ago, I think.
Any particular just time-wise, or?
Well, I figured after like a week, I have absorbed all of the information. Like, I have nothing more to get out of it. Like, either through talking to people on podcasts that I create or listening to other podcasts where people talk about all this stuff. There is already more information outside of the keynote than there is in the keynote. So, like, I don't really have a utility reason to watch it anymore. But like I might watch, like, I don't know, because I have already rewatched the Johnny Ive video, because they're like, I think they're better for rewatching because they're a couple of minutes each or whatever. Or I might watch, like, I'll look through the product pages and stuff like that because there's little tidbits. But going back to rewatch the events isn't something that I just have much of a desire to do anymore. I used to watch them like 2 or 3 times in total.
Yeah,
but I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I used to try to watch it that same night, because when it's live, and if you're like us, you're working, right? Like you're taking notes for shows, or you're tweeting hilarious things on Twitter, or if you're Federico and have a real thing to do, you're assigning stories. But it's easy to miss stuff, and so I usually try to watch it.
Hey, taking notes is a real thing to do.
I try to watch it that night, but it didn't pan out this time. But I watched it. I watched it like maybe 3 or 4 nights ago, and there's always stuff you miss. And but yeah, that first section still feels really nice. I think that's going to hold up really well.
Do you rewatch them, Federico?
I used to. I don't do that anymore. I used to do more of that, especially when I was not working on iOS reviews. So basically, because Apple does 2 events a year now, the WWDC one, I'm busy because I'm already taking notes, and the iPhone one, it's iOS is about to come out, the new version. So I'm always busy when Apple is doing, when Apple does the keynote. So I watch it the first time live, and that's about it.
They're bad times for you, really.
They really are. And when Apple used to do the March event, I wasn't busy in that time of the year. But now when they do, just June and September, I'm usually busy. And the October events were not really that much interesting. When they did, at least for me, when they did the Mac updates and that kind of stuff.
The March is mostly not interesting as well, right? Like on the whole, it tends to be one of the quieter. If they do, 3 or 4 a year, either March or October or both will be the quieter events. Like the more interesting stuff happens in June and September.
Totally. So last in the follow-up is just a little check-in on our St. Jude fundraiser. It's going super well. Our goal was $9,000, and we are at, as I load this page, $16,503. So almost double, which would be super awesome. I don't think maybe we didn't talk about this. So I'm not running this year, but our 2 oldest kids are doing the kids marathon. That's what this page is actually for. And every morning they wake up and want to know how it's going, which I think is super. It's super exciting for them to see that support roll in.
There you go. You can inspire the hearts and minds, dear listener. If you haven't already pledged, there's a link in the show notes to do that.
Yep.
Today's show is brought to you in part by our friends over at Squarespace. Use the offer code WORLD at checkout and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Make your next move with Squarespace. With the ability to grab a unique domain, couple your website with beautiful, outfit it with wonderful, award-winning templates, and so much more, Squarespace are the perfect place for your next idea, project, event, store, whatever it is. Make your next move with Squarespace. They are the all-in-one platform that will let you build any type of website, whether you're looking to build an online store, a portfolio, blog, maybe you want to build a site for your band or your restaurant or your business. They have templates that are fit for these exact purposes, but you can also choose any of their templates. Maybe there's just one that you like the look of more than others, and they're completely customizable. So you can just pull out all the content and start over with the nice, fresh, blank canvas, and you can customize things to your heart's content. They have loads of great font options and color options and all that stuff. There's nothing to install, no patches to worry about, no upgrades needed. Squarespace have got you covered. They have a 24/7 award-winning customer support team. If you need any help, they're right there just in case. This is also great for if you have like a family member or a local club or society and somebody's asking you for help with this kind of stuff. You can tell them what Squarespace is, you can help them get set up, and then you can just say, oh, if you need anything past this point, just contact their support team. Their support team's great, and they're right there. I've always found it really useful to look through their support documentation as well. I found answers to any question I've ever had in their support documentation, which is really, really nicely written, which I really appreciate. It's even some of the technical stuff. They're very, they keep things nice and clear, and it's easy to follow. So really, really great. Squarespace plans start at just $12 a month, but you can start a trial today with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com. Just use the offer code WORLD when you sign up, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase, as well as show your support for this show. Thanks to Squarespace for supporting Connected and Relay FM. Squarespace. Make your next move, make your next website. All right, let's talk about the Apple Watch. So just a brief recap in case you haven't watched the keynote at all. The big thing is that the Apple Watch Series 3 comes with LTE and it's 70% faster. I'm really intrigued about the how it's going to feel to be faster and untethered. Like, I'm really interested to see what happens to applications, right? Like, are they going to get the data from the cloud, and like, how is that all going to work? Like, I imagine myself, once I get my Apple Watch later this week, spoilers for if I pre-ordered or not, I guess I'm just going to put my iPhone into airplane mode for a while and just like see what happens, right? Like, what does it do, and how does it work? Because I know that there's that Wi-Fi thing, right? You can have it connect to a Wi-Fi network and stuff like that. But that's always been a little bit flaky, because I feel like the watch is still always looking for the phone. Like, even when it's doing that, it's like it would prefer to be talking to the phone directly if it can. So like, it tries to see if it can find it. But I'm really intrigued to see how things load and how things operate and how apps work with these two key things. So like a faster processor and a LTE chip.
Yeah, I don't know how much is really known about that. I also wonder if developers are going to need to do anything, I just don't know, with their Watch OS apps, like make it aware that it could, like if the phone is missing, that it can still do stuff. Like, it all seems a little hazy to me. My guess is that it will work just kind of as you expect. Like, if the phone's there, it will depend on the phone more, but then if the phone goes away, it is still fine. Like, it can still do everything that it needs to do. I expect it to be a very seamless experience. I don't know if there's going to be like any mode switching necessarily that we would even notice as end users.
So I don't understand the process of how this virtual SIM works. Like, it's still your phone number. So how does that happen? Like, does your carrier...
I have like very basic kind of understanding of this from the stuff that I've pieced together, that the carrier knows, and like, that's why there's all this carrier support needed, because my understanding is that they're, I assume, using a combination of some of the technology that Apple has for call forwarding and stuff like that, as well as just like the carrier being like, there are two devices that are connected to this telephone number, which I don't think is something. I mean, that's not something that's wild. I think Google Voice was like that, right? Like, Google Voice could call multiple devices. I assume there's some kind of forwarding that can occur, right? I mean, but the thing that I was going to mention specifically is like the electronic SIM thing. It's all a little bit peculiar to me, because there's no roaming or anything like that. It's not an Apple SIM. Like, you just sign up for a plan and that's it. I don't think it's like super simple to just move to another provider, right? Like, I don't think that's kind of how that works. But my understanding of it is kind of just like that Apple works with the carriers know there are these devices, and from what I can see from my carrier, if you buy a device kind of unlocked, like you just buy it straight from Apple, you sign up for a plan inside of the Apple Watch app, is what they're saying. Because my carrier, EE, is currently not publicly saying how much the plans are. Because what they are trying to do right now, I believe, is push people to buy it directly through them. So you can get like an Apple Watch for free, but you pay like £25 a month for it. But there is an ability to do what I'm doing, the same as a phone, and buy it outright and then get a plan. But there has been some people reporting that it's going to be something like £5 a month, which is effectively $10 a month, right? Which is what it's been elsewhere. So I'm expecting that Apple kind of set these limits to kind of fall around the same amount of money. But as it stands of this, like at the time of recording, like there is no information for me to work out how much this is actually going to cost me, which is very peculiar.
There was a thing over the weekend or at the end of last week where T-Mobile came out and said that you could use it on 3G. It would be throttled to 3G data speeds unless you paid more, and then you could have the speeds that you get on your phone. Seems like they've rolled that back a little bit, maybe. I think they got a lot of pressure for that.
Yeah, they've changed it to LTE now. Like they've just made it LTE for everyone.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that limiting it to 512 kilobits a second, not a super great look. But yeah, I think most of these are going to be $5 a month, $10 a month. And for me, like, I'm not super pumped about giving AT&T more money a month, but it's totally fine. Like, I don't have a problem with it. Like, have bought spoilers, an expensive watch yet again. And for me, like, it's going to be nice to just leave my phone behind doing certain things. You know, even this weekend doing yard work, where I have my 7 Plus in my pocket, and it's just like, it's bulky and fell out of my pocket at some point, like into face down in a bunch of dirt. It's like, hey, this would be really nice to have my phone in the counter inside. And if someone calls me or something, I could still use my watch. I think what it will do for me, and I'm curious what the two of you think about this, or if you guys run into this now, where like there's some apps that I use all the time on my phone that just are really bad or non-existent on the watch. So like if I get a DM in Slack, I can't reply to it on my watch because that's broken for whatever reason for me. And
well, you can from the notifications now, but yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, maybe it's just a beta thing. I have a lot of trouble with it, or you know, not even that. Like say, all sorts of stuff that comes in that is sort of like I'm gonna have to triage more, I guess, on the watch now than I ever have, because it could be the only thing I have with me. But you know, things like iMessage and stuff all work really well, and that's probably the most important thing. But I'm excited to have some freedom to leave the phone behind, but still be reachable. And so I joined you, Myke, and bought an LTE model.
So there's a thought that I had about the sort of the role that Apple sees for the Apple Watch. Because last year we were talking about like how Apple is now focusing on the health and fitness aspect, and that is still very much true, especially because, you know, they're featuring, you know, people who have been using the Apple Watch to get in better shape or to get healthier. And so that is still true that the Apple Watch is primarily maybe a fitness device. But there's also what I found fascinating from the event is how the Apple Watch is sort of becoming the new iPod for Apple from a music perspective. And they're pushing really heavily on this idea of now you can stream 40 million songs on your wrist. And, you know, they're doing commercials with the Apple Watch and the AirPods together. And they're, you know, pushing this idea of being free from the iPhone and having constant access to music. And I found that fascinating.
Oh, yeah. I'll have that now. Look at me.
Look at you. Welcome to 2017. We're so proud of you.
Yeah.
Yes. And even in iOS 11, you know, there's features that, like when I was in the music app the other day on the iOS 11 GM, and iOS 11 asked me, do you want to automatically add music to your Apple Watch? So iOS is even being proactive in terms of making sure that you always have music. And I found that interesting because it seems like, you know, from a beginning where the Apple Watch was supposed to be everything all the time, Apple has sort of scaled back. And now for the second year in a row, we're sort of seeing Apple tackling a different aspect of this big experience that is watchOS and optimizing a single, you know, it's like a single feature, a single aspect of the Apple Watch.
Yeah, I'm happy that it will have the music stuff, but music isn't what the audio that I want. right? Like I want podcasts and I want them with Overcast. That's what I want.
Totally.
Right. And I know that there are a million things and I know that Marco's working on it, but that's what I want. And it's frustrating to me that I'm going to have an LTE connected device that can't listen to audio unless it's Apple Music. Or I don't even know if Apple... Is there even an Apple Podcast Watch app? Probably not, right? I don't think there is. You know, it's just like, oh, come on. Like, whatever it is that... it surprises me that, like, they would make this LTE watch and focus on this one part of the audio thing about it, but yet there still seems to not be good audio APIs for other people to take advantage of. I don't think that does a good job for the watch. Like, the music thing is going to be the music thing, whatever it's going to be. When honestly, like, if I was going to bet, I would say that the audio APIs are bad because they maybe just want one music provider on the product for the time being. Would be my bet.
They could do that with policy, not a cruddy API. I don't know.
But policy is way harder to be like, no, we can only have one music app. Like, API is an easier way to do that.
They tangled with Spotify a couple years ago. They'll do it again. They're not afraid.
Well,
anyways, I agree with you though. Podcast on the watch would be amazing. We shouldn't go much further without recognizing that we have 2 listeners in the Apple Watch video.
Mm-hmm.
This is incredible. So the watch video, it's on YouTube now. The hey, people write letters to Apple saying, you know, how the watch has made a difference in their life, which is a great spot. Kyle the Gray is riding a bike, and it's so I started getting a text from him, like the stream was a couple minutes behind for different people. I was like, he's like, hey. I'm like, hey Kyle. It took me a minute to catch up what was going on. But he's put a link in we'll put a link in the show notes to the letter that he wrote. He put up on his website. And it was fun to see.
Along with Stuart Breingen, who's another Relay FM listener who was also in the video. Stuart was the guy who stands up in the office at the time to stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's him. He's another Relay FM listener who heard us talking about Kyle. I was like, hey, I'm in the video too. I was like, of course you are, because that makes sense. We have 2 listeners in an Apple video. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's the slow takeover of Relay of all Apple media. I think Apple really struggled with the watch in the beginning. They didn't really know what it was for. Like, you go back and watch that first keynote, and like Kevin Lynch is like, I opened my garage door with it, and I opened a hotel room with it, and I can see what my daughter's doing. Like, all of this stuff that the watch has just fallen away, and that the users of the watch have said, we want notifications and we want fitness. And Apple has responded to that and made those things better, right? This year, Sailor makes both of those things better, but their advertising has caught up with that. And I think like the iPad Pro commercials they've done of like the iPad Pro versus a traditional computer, and these like Apple Watch fitness pieces are like Apple's current marketing at its best. I think they're really finally telling the story of the Apple Watch in a way that makes sense. People like, hey, you know, if you want notifications and you want fitness tracking, like, this is the device you should get. And no other device on the market can do that. You know, people still ask Fitbit versus Apple Watch. Fitbit only gets you halfway there. And I think Apple's really kind of telling a cohesive story with this watch. I think this video is another chapter in that story.
Yeah, I would maybe like posit that this is what will always happen if you launch an app store onto a platform too early.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Look at the Apple TV, right? It's the same thing.
Yep, it's the exact same thing, because all people know is to put the app that they're currently making on it, and because nobody knows how to use it yet. Like, it is easily argued that the Apple Watch was debuted before Apple even knew how to use the thing, because WatchOS, was it 2? I think it was 2, which came out kind of like midway or something. Like, it was
Right, it's real fast.
And it made it vastly better, and then 3 made it even better, but like at the things that it was good at, and just de-emphasized the things that it wasn't. You know, like, oh, the honeycomb is dumb, and we should maybe have a better way of switching between apps.
Remember the interface to access your friends on a dial?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was a circle, and now it's gone completely.
Yeah, a couple of days ago, Dina was like, how do I get to the digital touch thing? Like she wanted it for some reason.
Like,
And I was just like, well, here's the 17 steps you now need to be able to do that.
Did you hear like a record scratch like when she asked that? Somewhere the one person at Apple who worked on that who's still there, like they felt it, right? They felt a disturbance in the force. Like someone's looking for it.
That person must have seen their feature slowly be demoted. First on the Apple Watch, and then on the iPhone and iMessage. You can now actually delete Digital Touch if you don't want it.
Like, how great must they have felt? Like, oh man, it's being put on the iPhone now. That's how good it is, and it's like it's taking up prime real estate.
It all came crashing down in 12 months.
Yeah. You went from having a whole button dedicated just to you on the Apple Watch to being deletable on the iPhone.
I'm so sorry for that. I mean, we make fun of the feature because the way that it looks and because nobody uses it. But I do feel kind of bad for, there must be someone who felt proud to make it happen, And so that's not funny that someone, it's not their fault. Some manager told them, hey, you got to make a feature that turns handwriting into this kind of cute animation. So the problem is definitely not the engineers who work on this stuff.
They can't all be winners, though, right? Like that's just
they cannot all be winners, and that was an unfortunate feature. And I see every time we talk about Digital Touch and, we poke fun at the feature, I get people on Twitter and say, oh, you're so detached from reality. I see people using Digital Touch every day. Maybe you're right. I think facts speak for themselves. And the fact that, now it's basically impossible to use it on the watch, and on the iPhone, you can delete the thing if you want. It suggests to me that it didn't go as planned. You can still send handwritten messages in iMessage, though.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
So what did we get, right? Like I went with a 42mm Space Gray with the olive sport loop, I think it's called. The olive, dark olive or something.
So I went with the LTE stainless steel with the white sport band.
Oh.
My original Apple Watch was stainless steel. My Series 2 is the Space Gray aluminum. And the steel is much heavier, so I actually pulled my original Apple Watch out this week and kind of been looking at it. I really missed the way that it looked, so I went steel this time again. So hopefully I get used to the weight. But
regular stainless steel or black stainless steel?
Yes, regular shiny stainless steel.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, back to my roots.
Yep.
I didn't buy a watch at all because of it's not. The cellular version is not out in Italy yet. I think we're not gonna get it until next year.
Whoa!
I saw someone on Twitter, and I hope they're wrong. I don't know where this person got their information, but it's not out in Italy yet. So I really do want the cellular one, especially now that we go walking with the dogs often, and I don't want to bring my phone. It's heavy. And it falls out of my pocket when I have to play with the dogs. So I really want the cellular Apple Watch, but there's no point for me in buying it now where my Series 2 is still working pretty well. It's actually fine. It's perfect. But I want the cellular one, so I'm going to wait.
And I guess it's worth seeing how people report on and talk about and review the speed performances. I guess it's worth hearing what they're like before buying one, right? Because if it is a thing where it's like, oh my god, everything's different, then you might be like, okay, maybe I'll get one of the GPS ones or whatever, right? Because they're cheaper and whatever. But I would probably take the line that you're taking of if you can't get the cellular, then don't bother until you know otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I would buy the cellular model now and wait until it can be activated, but it's not for sale at all. And so
you can't even. Oh, I mean that makes sense.
I cannot even buy it. And I saw on Twitter that if you buy a cellular one from, say, the UK, it's not going to work on the Italian network.
Well, okay, but I think that's only once you activate it. Right? So they don't roam, but I think it's I would be surprised if that was the case. I think it's you get those bands, you got to get your watch has got to be one of the ones within the certain bands, right? It's the same as when you buy an iPhone from abroad. And then my expectation is once you have activated a plan, you then it's locked.
You cannot change. Okay,
That's
it's locked.
because it doesn't roam, and that's my expectation. Because when you go onto the page, like, and you look at all the like the bands and the tech specs and that sort of stuff, there are like similar model numbers that work on multiple countries, right? The same as an iPhone. So that's that. I expect that's the thing, the way that it ends up working. But yeah, they just don't sell it for you there. But yeah, that's how I assume.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But like that would be my assumption, just based upon the what are the technical specs pages or whatever they are.
The two changes that I really want to try are, I mean, of course, the cellular stuff and Apple Music integration, and Siri that is faster and speaks to you now. So that I'm actually really excited about the Siri change. But I don't know when it's gonna come out in Italy, so we'll see.
Yeah, I haven't really spent any time with WatchOS 4 yet either. Because as of the time of recording this, it's not available like on the public track. And I stay away from putting the betas on my watches because it feels like it's always a nightmare of some description. So I stay away from those. But eventually, well, within a few hours from now, I will be trying out 4, and then in a few days, I'll be trying it on the new watch.
Yeah, it's a lot of waiting this week. You update your current watch to WatchOS 4, which take a long time.
Yep.
And then back up and move your data to your new watch, which also takes a long time. Lots of waiting this week for Apple Watches.
Yep. Which is super quick. Let's touch on the Apple TV 4K. The HDR movies are available now, so you can actually buy movies that are 4K HDR. And if you have a new iPad Pro, you can watch them in 1080p HDR. And I bought Logan, the Wolverine movie, and it looks good. I mean, I haven't compared it to something else, like to another device playing it, but like the movie looked really good. But yeah, I like the fact that my display on my iPads can do this stuff, so they're letting me. I like that. That's cool.
Have you been blown away by the color, Myke?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Does it look good?
I don't know. It burned my retina out, so. But it was good that one time.
It was worth it. Okay.
Yeah. It was a color overload. But yeah, the Apple TV itself, I've ordered one of these as well because I have a 4K HDR TV, so I want to be able to watch all of the stuff that I'm going to watch on it when eventually Amazon Prime comes to the Apple TV, which is apparently still happening later this year. I will then be able to watch everything that I watch all of it on the Apple TV and a lot of it in 4K. There is one holdout though, which is really interesting. The movie studio that is held out, and I guess follow up for Eddie Q, right? He did a free upgrade thing. We were talking about Eddie Q a few weeks ago, and if he was useful, well, that seemed like a useful thing. I assume that that's Eddie's mad skills and negotiations.
Yeah, we were talking. Hey, maybe Eddie is his most important skill, most valuable asset is how he's able to negotiate with the labels and with the industry, and this should be the answer that we were looking for. I mean, this is a pretty sweet deal. It's one of my favorite surprises from the keynote. One of the smaller announcements that actually. I went like, that's really well done.
Because that felt like a given that we would be paying a small amount of money. Best case scenario was, we'll pay a small amount of money to upgrade them, right? Because there was always the risk of like, no, you got to buy them again. So to get everything for free is great. But there is one surprising holdout of all of the movie studios, and that's Disney. Disney is the only major movie studio that is not putting 4K HDR content on the Apple TV. And I think I might know why. So I saw some news a few weeks ago about the fact that Marvel and Star Wars, all of the Marvel and Star Wars movies from here on out, will be only streaming on Disney's own platform, their own streaming service.
Yep.
I reckon these two things are related. The 4K versions of the movies will only be available there.
They'd rather charge you $20 a month than $20 every 6 months for a movie.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer. It sucks, though. I mean, I've thought a lot about the Disney streaming thing because I'm like pretty much their ideal customer, right?
Oh, you'll be getting it, man. Like,
I have an Apple TV, I have disposable income, I spend on media,
and
I have
3
children who
children
want to watch Disney movies. I like Star Wars and Marvel movies, so I'm probably going to sign up for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna, but I don't wanna because,
Right.
you know,
I'd rather spend the $20 or $24, $29 and own it, but it's just me.
Yep.
He said, moving to Apple Music.
But it's like I am already subscribed to 2 streaming services. I don't now want to start subscribing to streaming services of independent not labels, but like movie studios.
Right.
Like I don't want my Disney one and then my HBO one and then my Netflix one and then my CBS one and then my BBC one. This is not a thing that I want to be able to do because Netflix, as it goes further and further down the line, is turning into that, right? Like Netflix is turning into you sign up for the Netflix content. So it is becoming its own studio, right? So as Netflix is now losing more third-party content, they're all just starting their own streaming services. And I'm not keen on having like 20 different channels and having to pay $20 a month for all of them. Like that's not a thing.
We're currently watching an NBC show on Netflix, and every time you start it, it says, hey, this show comes off Netflix at the end of the month. It's like we're racing to finish watching this before it goes away.
Yeah, it's like we wanted to rewatch The Office, so I'm now buying The Office again because it's not on any streaming platform in the UK.
It's kind of funny how, and it seems like history is again gonna repeat itself because we had the solution to piracy, right? You sign up for either you buy stuff on iTunes and it's really easy, or you use Netflix and it's really easy, and people don't have the patience for torrents anymore because there's this single service, you pay for it, and it's done. But now, because these companies are greedy and they want to make more money, they're going to split everything up into 20, 25 services. And so people are going to be like, yeah, I don't want to pay a subscription for 10 different things every month. So guess what? I'm going to use torrents again, and I'm going to download stuff illegally. So it seems like the media industry is really talented in terms of messing everything up all over again. Just when they had some kind of solution, they have to ruin it all because money. And I mean, that is happening with music, it's happening with movies and TV shows. It's like, I don't know where this is going. You cannot possibly expect people to pay for 10 different services every single month. I don't know.
Well, they're going to try. And then it's all going to break down again.
They are... Until someone comes along and says, hey, you guys, I know you're in trouble, and guess what? We're going to save you. So that's going to be the iTunes Store situation all over again. But for streaming, first you got to let these companies, simmer and understand their mistakes. And then someone is going to come along. You bet that someone is going to come along and be like, well, yeah, maybe. Maybe it's
Eddie.
the second coming of Eddie. It's gonna be about saving the media industry from streaming and different services. I can see that happen actually.
So Federico, did you get an Apple TV?
No, I don't have a 4K TV, and it's something on my shopping list for later this year. I want to get a 4K TV and I want to get a PlayStation 4 Pro, and when I do that, I'm also gonna get a 4K Apple TV. But right now, I don't have it, so no point in getting one right now.
Steven?
I do not have a 4K TV, so no Apple TV for me.
So neither of you wanted the updated Siri remote?
Oh yeah, that ring around the menu button is really going to make all the difference.
There's a circle now.
I ordered one because I have a 4K TV and there's maple syrup in my Siri remote, so... I told you about this, right?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know. I don't remember the story.
I spilled a little maple syrup on my Siri remote like a year ago, and the buttons still get stuck every now and then.
It's probably better than what it shipped by default. So.
Oh. It's just like I look for the extra sticky button, and then that's the one that goes on the right side.
You fixed the design with some maple syrup, Myke.
That's all it takes, guys. Come on, that's all it takes. So next week on the show, we'll be talking, I guess, about our opinions. Well, Federico can listen in as me and Steven talk about Apple Watches, and then you can all listen as I talk to you about how great the new screensavers look.
Is that how people feel every single week when they listen to us?
What, excited?
Now they listen to other people's opinions in silence.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's what a podcast is.
That's what it
That's
is.
exactly what a podcast is.
Have you
just
ever listened to a
realized.
podcast before?
Well, I make them. I don't listen to. No, I do listen. But yeah,
mhm.
when you say it like that, it kind of makes me feel bad. Oh well.
Would you want to leave people a moment to say something to you right now?
Yeah, I mean, you can text me. You can send me a Twitter message.
How can they
You know?
text you?
A digital touch.
Send me. Send me. There's actually people who find me on Telegram and they send me good wishes on Telegram.
That's nice.
That's nice.
Like that is very nice. It's mildly it's right on the verge of mildly creepy and nice. I'm not sure if there's an adjective to define that.
Germans probably have a word.
Yeah, I know. Probably. So yeah.
All right, well, we're going to take a break now, but before we do, I'm going to leave like just a couple of seconds now, so like our listeners can say something to you, Federico, and then I'll thank FreshBooks.
Okay.
All right, this episode is brought to you by FreshBooks. I hope everybody had something nice to say to Federico. To all you freelancers out there, you know how important it is to make smart decisions for your business. And is there a smarter decision than being able to save time to be able to put it to use in better ways? And our friends at FreshBooks can help you save up to 192 hours with their cloud accounting software because it is that easy to use. Imagine what you could do with an extra 192 hours. Because by simplifying tasks like invoicing, tracking expenses, and getting paid online, FreshBooks has drastically reduced the time it takes for their customers to deal with their paperwork. When you email a client an invoice, FreshBooks can show you when they've seen it, which puts an end to those guessing games. And then also, you can go into each of your clients, and you can see just how long it takes them to pay you on average. So you'll know whether it's worth bothering them or not, because you'll be like, oh, okay, I told them to pay in 30 days, but they take 35 days. I'll give it a couple of extra days. Also, their notification center is a new feature of their brand new FreshBooks. It's like your personal assistant. They will let you know whenever you log in. Your lovely little assistant will let you know what has changed in your business since you last logged in and what needs to be dealt with pronto. So you can just go in, and every time you go to FreshBooks, you'll just get the most important things that desire your attention. FreshBooks have over 10 million users now, but they've managed to stay a pretty small company. This is why Forbes said that on their best small companies of the year, they gave them the title Small Giant, which I love that phrase. I like to think of myself as a small giant. If you're listening to this and you're still not using FreshBooks, now is the time to try it. They're offering an unrestricted 30-day free trial for listeners of this show with no credit card required. All you have to do is go to freshbooks.com/connected and enter connected in the How Did You Hear About Us section. I would just like to say, personally, FreshBooks is so amazing. I use it all the time. Both me and Steven use it every single week. I can attest to the amount of time that it has saved me. If I had to do these invoices and send them out in any other way, I would probably lose my mind. Just the creation of these documents in something like Pages, or having to track the due dates of all of this stuff, I think it's not even so much about the time that I've saved, although that is great. I probably wanted to have just given up by now. I'd like to thank FreshBooks for their support of this show, Relay FM, and our business as well, because they're awesome and they help us out so much. Thank you, FreshBooks.
It felt really special to send invoice 1000.
iOS 11 is out, and with that comes the most important thing of the year, which is Federico Vitici's iOS 11 review. Federico, congratulations, you did it again.
Thank you. It happened again. Yeah. Thank you.
As we start talking about this, we talk about the review, and then we're going to kind of round out today talking about a little bit about iOS 11 in general and some applications. But the review is the thing that requires the most attention right now. I would love some statistics from you, like words, time it took you to complete the review, things like that. Do you have any of that stuff to hand? I would be really interested to know.
Yes, I actually do. I can look them up for you right now. So in terms of statistics for the word count is mostly similar to last year. It's around 50,000 words. And there's 38 videos and 358 links in the main body of the story.
Wow.
I don't know. Actually, yes, I do know. And there are 251 images in the story.
Do you have a sense of how much time it took you in hours?
Yes, because I've been time tracking all of this in Toggle, and I set up a project for the Mac Stories review, divided in multiple tasks. So like research, writing, editing, screenshots. There's some time that is actually that is missing. So this is treat this as a very close approximation of the work that I put into this. So I'm looking it up right now. iOS 11 review this year. It took me, let's see, my name is Federico. Yes. Wanna guess?
125 hours.
I'm going to say over 200.
Yes. 211 hours.
Ha!
Of
Price is Right style.
these are the hours that I saved in Toggle. For example, 2 days ago, I forgot to time track the entire day, and I probably worked 10 hours that day. So it's it's around 200 and I would say 230 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, let's say that I didn't track 20 of them. Yeah, and I have a breakdown here. It says 16 hours in June, which I don't believe. It's there's probably 10 hours missing. 90 hours in July. 62 hours in August, and 42 hours, again, probably 10 missing in September. Yeah. It's a big project.
It's a lot of time.
It's a lot of my time, yes.
How did it feel this year to write the review?
It felt better. It felt like I was it felt like the words were coming out more easily, especially when I got to the iPad chapter. So what I struggled last year, coming from iOS 9, there was such a huge iPad release. iOS 10 required me to to switch gears and to change the way that I was talking about iOS, because it was this kind of consumer update with messages, with Apple Music, and that is not my forte, I would say. And so I had to learn a different skill. How do I talk about these apps? How do I talk about these services? And this year, it was kind of a return to form, in the sense that I'm back to talking about iPad productivity, and I'm talking about these changes to multitasking and all this stuff. So I had to go back to the way that I was looking at iOS 2 years ago in 2015 with iOS 9. And I was talking about this with you and with Sylvia a few days ago. I don't remember what it was like in July. So after my notes were complete and my mind map was done and was waiting for me, I remember that in 2 weeks in July, I wrote most of the review. But if you ask me, do you remember the exact moment when you went from a blank page to the chapter? I don't remember. Because the way that I write is I take a lot of notes, I think about it a lot, I create a mind map, and I think until I sit down, I close the door on my bedroom studio, and I write for 6 to 7 to 8 hours straight. And so it's that kind of process that just happens.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you to answer your question is that I felt better writing this one than last year's review, because writing the iPad section made me happy. And that was a major difference from iOS 10.
Because I guess there was more in it for you to be personally excited about. It probably made it a lot more fun to actually write.
Yes, it's partly fun, but the other part is, there's some folks who see these stories as manuals or guides, and sure, there's explanations of how things work. That is, I believe, the nature of a technical review. You can't just tell people there's this feature and I have this opinion. At least I wouldn't feel good about it to just have opinions without explaining why or how. And the way that the iPad chapter made me feel is it was fun to play with and it was fun to learn, but also it allowed me to present my opinions in a way that I could have the evidence to present those opinions. I could have more material to go about. And whereas last year, sure, I could talk about iMessage, but and I had fun, but I didn't feel as good as I felt this year talking about the iPad, because it's this is what I do on iOS, and so it was a chance for me to share all these opinions that I had bottled up, all these thoughts in one single huge story, and that made me feel good about it.
I think that really comes off in the review. I mean, let alone the fact that what percentage of the review is the iPad section? It's probably close to like a third, if not more, I would assume.
So the iPad chapter, I'm not good at math, Myke. I would say it's about 35.
Yeah.
30% of the review. Yeah, one third of the review is the iPad. Yeah.
I mean, and that really comes off. I mean, in the conclusion and the introduction, and there are sections throughout, even that are outside of the iPad chapter, that are all focusing on the iPad, right? I mean, and you call it yourself that this is an iPad release again. That's what iOS 11. It has a lot of things in it, but it shines best on the iPad, at least from the features that Apple shipped.
Yes.
Right, because there's stuff like ARKit and things like that. Like, they exist, but that's not what the review is about, because there was nothing in iOS 11 itself from a consumer perspective that you could really talk about there.
Exactly. There's no... I debated having, for example, ARKit as a chapter on its, a standalone chapter in the review. And instead I put it as a section inside everything else, because to me that's what it is. It's a major feature of iOS 11, but it's not made by Apple. It's not... Technically, it is part of the OS, but it's also not, unless you go on the App Store and download a bunch of apps. So when it comes to the stuff that is baked into the OS, so if I buy a new iPhone and there's or a new iPad and there's iOS 11 on it, what do I get? And this is what you get. The stuff that I talk about in the review, this is what you get when you do a clean install and you have no apps. This is what there is on iOS 11. So I always try to take that approach. I don't talk about the iPhone 10. I don't talk about future features that my readers cannot try. I don't talk about third-party apps too much. I do mention third-party apps as examples of APIs and technologies applied to iOS 11, but I don't review them. And I don't, for that reason, I don't talk about ARKit too much, because we'll have to see how it goes with third-party developers on the App Store. And I know that other reviews are probably going to focus on ARKit a lot, and it's I guess some publications are going to make their iOS 11 reviews mostly about ARKit, and I think that's fair. But from my perspective, it's not the kind of review that I wanted to have.
Yeah, because I think review is a tough word for what you do, and I think this is where a lot of people stumble when they see the many words. I have been referring to it as like a comprehensive review, as maybe a way to describe it, but it is part review in the sense of the idea of here is my opinion about this stuff. But it's also a in-depth look at everything.
Yes.
And there shouldn't be many of those, right? There should be one or two of those that are published, because nobody can read 10 publications writing about every single feature of iOS. But I mean, look, no. I'm biased. I mean, but I think we can all agree here. Everybody here believes you're the best person to do this, because you understand iOS at a level that is greater than most people that are writing about this type of stuff in our industry, because you use it to a greater extent than anybody else. But yeah, it's like, but it is both of those things, and I think that the word review puts it in a corner that I don't think is fair to what you produce.
Well, to me, the difference is quite simple. When you buy a TV and you open the box and you take out the manual has no opinions, has no thoughts, has no personality, and it's just a manual. And honestly, when someone refers to my stuff as a manual, I find that mildly offensive.
Because it's not a manual. It's not a manual.
It's not calling it a manual. Honestly, diminishes myself and what I do for a living. Yes, I do talk about every single feature, every single detail, because that's what I like to do. But I do so. I at least I hope that it comes through. I try to do so with my personal opinion, my personal thoughts. It's why I write in the first person. It's why the review. Yes, it's comprehensive. Yes, it's not the usual review. And, to me, it would be a manual if, the guide that you buy from Apple is a manual that you download from the iBook store. That's a manual.
Mm-hmm.
They have no opinions. They just say that everything is fantastic because it's Apple. We can debate on, whether I'm right or I'm wrong. I don't think it's about that. I think, and we go over this every single year. Obviously, there's people who don't like long form. There's people who do. And there's people who want audio. And we made them happy this year, I hope. There's people who want ebooks. And there's also an option for that. So, yeah. I don't even remember what the question was anymore, Myke.
Well, I was just saying that I don't even know how I got here now. But I was just saying that I find either guide and review to not do a good job of explaining what you do. Because I think it's
Probably.
both and it's more then, right? Because you do explain all the features like a guide would, but you put your spin on it and your opinion in it and your personality in it like a review. But people who are coming at it for a guide or coming at it for a review, they're getting more on both. Like it's, you know what I mean? I feel like there isn't a word for it. But I think my original point was there shouldn't be though, because there shouldn't be a lot of them. This is something that you really have to live with, and it's something that not a lot of people will be able to produce. And if you look at like the reviews that are most similar to yours are obviously Syracuse's macOS reviews, his OS X reviews. And the way that you write a review like this is by that's all you do. And John didn't write anything else during this period of time. If ever in a year, he would write these. And it's similar, like over the summer, you don't write anything else, really, other than this. Mm-hmm. This is what you write. And I think that's why not every publication should or can do something like this, because you've got to be in a position where you can devote somebody's entire working life, effectively, to thinking, eating, sleeping, living this thing, because you wrote a book, right? Like it's book length. That's what you did. Mm-hmm. You turned out the amount of words that go into a book, which turns it into entertainment and a resource. And I know that having, I think this is the first time I have read one of your iOS, of the three, that I have read every single word of your review. But I also find that to be mostly okay, because there are chapters that I am not interested in, so I wouldn't read them. And I think that that's mostly fine. Like, for example, the Safari chapter. I don't use Safari. Or the Apple Mail chapter. I don't use it. Like, I don't care.
Well, they're really small ones, though.
They are really small. But do you know what I mean? That, like, so there is an element of it where, like, if you were to write a review of any of the apps that are about to come out, they're different because they're less guides and it's more just like, here is everything that I liked in this thing, and here's whether I think you should buy it or not. And you do that with iOS 11. Like, here is everything I like about this, and here's my opinions. But also, here is all of this information. It's like, I'm trying to give a compliment to you here, but say that like it is a unique, that there aren't a lot of things that are like this.
It's called review, I think, because we don't have a better word for it. And I think it's a comprehensive, a long form, and I see it as, okay, sit down and open this book and read this website or listen to this audiobook, and let's go over every single change in iOS 11. And this is what I think. Is that a review? Is that a guide? Is that something in between? I don't know, but people seem to tune in for it. And I agree that calling it just review doesn't represent exactly what it is, but maybe the point is it doesn't need to be. It just is, like.
A review either is or it isn't, right?
It's a Schrodinger's review. What is it really? It can be a review or not until you open it.
All right, you mentioned the audiobook a couple of times.
Yeah, let's get into this a little bit. So, Myke, you recorded it. It's your voice. Mm-hmm. Your voice over the course of, it's 5 hours long?
5 hours and 22 minutes.
You reading the review, there's characters in it, you do voices. No, I was kidding. You don't do voices.
There are characters, though.
Why is this, why this edition, Federico? Why did you want to add this component to it?
There's two reasons. The first one is Myke. Every single year, usually when we're flying to WWDC or we're talking to each other, and he goes, you should really have an audiobook option. And every year I go like, but there's no time. How can I add an extra product to the things that we work on in the summer? I don't have enough people to help me. It's not something that I have the time to deal with. And the second reason is Mech Stories readers and people who follow us. There's a good percentage of them that every year they go like, I actually really wish there was a way to listen to this because I have the time to listen. I don't have the time to sit down and read. And I always found that interesting. And I also found Myke's argument interesting because he sure made a good point. And this year, I guess the stars aligned in that we're a small team, but we're growing every year. And this year we had Ryan helping us, and WWDC was a week earlier. Apple did the event a week later than we expected, and it was a combination of timing, and the Mech Stories team was bigger, and Myke's arguments were very convincing. And also I had an extra week to write in July, so I was like, let's just try and see what happens. So I think either when we were coming back from WWDC or maybe in San Jose or maybe when I was already in Italy, I don't remember, but around that time, before or during or after WWDC, I told Myke, let's do the audiobook. And he seemed to be happy. I don't know if he was happy later on when he was reading the book. But initially, I don't know if he hates me now, but initially at least he was really happy about the idea.
So what does that process look like? I assume that this was recorded pretty late in the game, right? So all the sections were done. Kind of where did this fall into the workflow that you had already established since this is not your first review?
So, obviously there were a new kind of collaboration to consider. Because Myke told me that he was going to be free a couple of weeks in August, and then we thought we were going to have a week or 10 days in September to finish everything. Obviously, I didn't want to send drafts to Myke, like stuff that I would have to considerably change later.
Yeah, this was something that we spoke about very early on. The drafts were pointless for me.
Yes.
Because I can't do anything with a draft because so much is going to change that I would be wasting my time in the first recording. There were changes made to pre-recorded audio, but these were small changes, or I would change a whole section. But so many small and big changes would have to be made if I recorded any draft audio that it would make the recording of the first audio pointless. So we didn't. Right. We had to wait for things to be completed before I could do anything with them.
Yeah, and so what I did was I sort of changed my workflow around Myke. From a technical perspective, I was writing my review in Ulysses, and I organized chapters as individual sheets in the app. So as I was marking something as edited, I sent the draft to Ryan, and after going through each chapter 6 or 7 times, I marked the chapter as finalized for Myke. Actually, Myke was a keyword in my Ulysses. When something was tagged as Myke, it meant that Myke had received the chapter, and so I could move on. I also used Myke as a filter in Ulysses. So I used Myke for automation, really. there's the moral of the story is Myke makes for some excellent workflows.
I do.
And instead of the big change, to sum up, was instead of treating the review as a big single text file, it was edited multiple times over and over in chunks, and then later on again multiple times as a single file. But to make the audiobook happen, I needed to edit for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, all the chapters until iPad, basically. And I finished iPad, and I sent the iPad chapter and all the remaining ones, but those were shorter, to Myke in early September.
That's a lie, but yep, go on.
They were not shorter?
They were not shorter.
I mean,
all of the longest chapters were the second half that you sent me. So like
really?
Files was in there, and Apps.
Files was not long.
Files, Apps, and
Apps
iPad are the longest chapters.
Apps was long. Ah,
At least in PDF page count, I believe that they were the longest. But basically we arranged this that I would kind of tackle it in 2 chunks. I would be recording some in America and some when I got back home again. And I recorded, I think, 9 out of 18 chapters in America. And I came home to the thought that, like, great, only 50% of the work left to go. It was probably like a good 60 to 70% of the work was still left to be done. Just from a pure time perspective for me, for what needed to be recorded. Just because the iPad chapter and some of the surrounding chapters in the second half of the chapters, which is not the second half of the book, right? Like I did 9 chapters and then 9 chapters, but they came through slightly out of order. But the later chapters that were sent to me were longest, which was a fun thing to realize. But I was also blessed with the extra week. I could have done it, and I planned to do it all in a week just in case. But then when the Apple event was announced, I was able to give myself a little bit more breathing room, which was welcome.
So you were recording basically in sections as Federico had them ready for you. You kind of were able to move through. It's not like you sat down on a Monday and recorded for 5 hours and then stopped and you were done.
There's absolutely no way I could have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times where I was sitting and talking into a microphone for an hour, like just me, and I hadn't realized the difference between a podcast and a narration project. Because there are a few things that are different, but they make for a incredibly different experience. One of them is the fact that on none of my shows do I talk for the entire time, right? Like there is conversation. The other is the way that I'm talking to you guys right now. I'm just talking. We're just talking. We're having a conversation. But reading and repeating and going back and fixing things and talking over myself and repeating lines and trying to like maintain a specific tone and pitch, that is much harder than I had initially anticipated it would be. And I was very surprised how I would finish a 45-minute recording session and I would be hoarse in a way that I am never after recording podcasts. It was a very different experience for me. As a fun fact, every single chapter, bar one, was recorded in one sitting. iPad took 3 sittings. Everything else was done in one, and the maximum time was an hour each. Like would be the maximum for them, and they would go anywhere from like 10 minutes to an hour. But iPad took 3, done over 2 days. I think it was 2 or 3 days. And that was what I got because we had extra time. Otherwise, iPad would have been all done in one day, and I would have died.
Right. So you recorded this. I assume that you did the editing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So ums and ahs taken out. Is it real tight? How was that process? And I'm curious how much time the edit took versus the narration.
So it's interesting because the edit took longer than I expected because I thought I was giving myself I thought I'd come up with an ingenious system. So when I edit a podcast like the one we're doing right now, I will make notes of the things that need to be fixed later on. And what that does is it means that it takes me about half of the recorded time to edit and publish a show. A show where I listen through to the entire thing, so something like Cortex, and edit it, it takes me about 1.5 to 2 minutes for every minute recorded, right? So if something lasts an hour, it will take me like an hour and a half to 2 hours to edit it. So I figured to myself, what I will do is I record directly into Logic, and I will drop markers in the Logic project of all of the places where I screw up, and then all I need to do is just go and fix those. You screw up a lot when you're reading, like a lot. Especially because for, I reckon, about 90% of the book, the first time I'd read any of the words was the time that I was recording them. So there were many parts of the book that I had read multiple times because they had to be recorded multiple times because I was unhappy with how I was reading them. Right? Or like something just wasn't going the way I was expecting, so I had to go back and redo it because I was unhappy with it. It ended up still taking me 1.5 to 2 minutes for every recorded minute, even with this different process, because there were many, many more edit points than I was expecting in every chapter, and they were difficult edits. You know, there are many parts where one half of a word and the second half of a word were recorded during different times, and that was just the best place to stitch them. That is a very, very difficult thing to do convincingly in a way that you wouldn't notice. But that was a way. So, like, you know, I would start the word iPad, and half of it would have been recorded at one point, and the second half of it was recorded 10 minutes later, but I had to redo it and stitch them back together again. So it was a tricky edit, and also I had to make sure that I was picking up everything that was needed whenever I was making an edit to make sure that I got all the parts that I needed to get. So yeah, the edit process took a very long time. And then once everything was edited, it was all sent back to Ryan and Federico, and then they would go through, and there would be things that I still needed to go and change, or things that they weren't happy with, or just like words that I just flat out said wrong, right? Like just, you know, meant to say complicated and I say conjugated. Like, you know, it could be anything because you're just reading, right? And it's like, who knows what might come out. And sometimes these words changed the meaning of it completely. You know, there were sometimes I would say can't instead of can, right? And then it's like, well, now I've changed the meaning of this entire sentence or this paragraph. So there was lots of them that had to be changed. There were lots of things that we had to go back and agree upon. There were parts of the review that I had to ad-lib and change because they didn't make sense otherwise. So that was a fun thing to try and work out. Like trying to read aloud strings of code doesn't work. So you have to try and find like a way to explain them, or like things I am very aware now of how putting things in brackets or parentheses can significantly change the way something sounds when you read it aloud. And trying to find ways to like twist sentences and paragraphs around where I can to make sure that you can still be followed and be understood. All of that stuff was a big challenge. It was an interesting challenge. It was a fun challenge, but it was a big one. And my time, so it took me 33 hours in total to record, edit, and master the 5-hour audiobook.
That's a bunch of time. I agree with you. Narration is much harder than it seems. Several years ago, I narrated a documentary, and it was extremely difficult, extremely time consuming, and yeah, like I thought going into it, well, you know, I podcast several times a week. I can just go do this, and it is not that way at all. So I'm glad that you got to experience that. For me, it was a real eye-opener about that other types of vocal work besides just what we do. And I know it was made a little bit worse because you had travel and then you were sick. And so I know the three of us were talking about that. Like, do you record now and see if you feel better in the later of the week, or what if you feel worse? Like, I know there were a bunch of moving parts there to get it done at the end. But I've read the review. I have not heard the review, and I'm super excited to dive into the audiobook. Federico, is the audiobook for everyone? Is it Club Mac Stories members only? How is all this stuff working?
So the the review as an ebook is available for free to club members. So this year, because we're doing the audiobook as a separate project, the audiobook is available at $9.99. We set up a Gumroad page where you can go and buy the audiobook. But if you're a club member, you can take advantage of a 60% discount. And so you can apply a promo code that is available to you in your profile area on the Club Mac Stories webpage, and you can get the audiobook at $3.99. So that's $6 off. And I thought about this for a long time because obviously, the costs and, it wouldn't justify making this a free, like another free perk for everybody.
Because I ain't cheap, kids.
We're doing free perks, and we are doing actually even more free stuff this year. It's gonna be a making of. There's gonna be an episode of App Stories just for members. A bunch of stuff. But this one had to be a separate thing. Also because it's something that not everybody wants. But I also wanted to give a discount to members, and hopefully that will work out fine.
Please buy the audiobook, because Federico worked really hard on the words, and I worked really hard on the audio. And I think that it is a really great way to consume it. I mean, the reason the book exists is because I wanted it to exist. And then I have tried to twist Federico's arm and then eventually just said, well, I'll read it if that means that you'll do it. Because for someone like me, it is a much easier way to get through the book. Like I would struggle, and I do struggle to sit and read for really, really long periods of time. And to be able to listen, which I'm assuming everybody that is hearing me right now enjoys listening to things, I think that it is a really nice way to consume it. And there's chapters. I put audio MP3 chapters in the books, all the big chapters, all the big sections. You can skip around and listen to the parts that you want. It was a big project, and I think we all worked really hard on it, and I think that shows. And I think that people should check it out. And if you're a Club Mac Stories member, it's really not a large amount of money at all. I mean, $10 is not much, or $9.99. Do you say it was $9.99?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not a lot of money, but like $3.99 is barely anything. And there's I'll tell you the tricks. So because Federico won't, if you sign up for a month of Club Mac Stories and buy the book, you're still cheaper than if you just buy the book outright.
Yeah.
So think about that one, kids. Right? There's a Myke Hurley brand life hack.
You get the ebook and you get the audiobook and you get the making of this week. Myke and I and Sam and Ryan are going to talk about the behind the scenes of the review, and you get an episode of App Stories Unplugged, and you get all the back archives.
You called it Unplugged?
Yes, it's called App Stories Unplugged.
That's awesome.
Because you go for longer, right? I guess that's the unplugged nature of it. Yeah, it's not half an hour.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
There's a guitar in the background.
Yeah. And you also got all the back archives of Club Mac Stories going back 2 years. So, and you're still cheaper than if you just bought the audiobook. So
do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's it, the iOS 11 review. It is now available in multiple formats, brought to you by multiple people. It is a wonder to behold. Having read every single word, Federico, this is your best review, because it is all of the personality of the first one combined with everything you learned doing it a second time. And then you add on to it everything you learned doing it a third time, and your real excitement for everything comes through, and you've clearly perfected your methods, because this one it's sublime, and you did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Plus, just one last little thing. There are some Easter eggs in the audiobook version that do not exist in the written version. 5 points to the first person who can tell me all of them. I know what they are. I think there are 3.
Wait. What are points?
I just give
what
people
is actually
points.
the
I just
reward?
assign Myke points.
Can you redeem them later?
Yeah.
What do you get with Myke points?
Hugs.
That doesn't. We should actually do Myke points as a regular thing on Connected, and maybe eventually when we do the WWDC shows, the people with the most points, they actually do get something.
All right, yeah, okay. So this is the beginning of the Myke points system.
The Myke points, okay.
It's like the house point system for Harry Potter, but more advanced.
Yes.
So the first
But
5
just for
Myke
Myke.
points go to the person that can tell me the 3 Easter eggs that I can remember.
All right. I also should say there are many Easter eggs also in the written version and especially in the screenshots.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just gonna say there's a rickroll in the review.
Oh my god!
The recast video.
There isn't one in the audio. Don't worry.
So I challenge the readers of the review to find the video and see if you can. You need to be creative. So I want to see who the first person is. You will also get a Myke point just by me.
One.
I'm also allowed.
Just one?
We are allowed to assign Myke points on your behalf if you agree upon the assignment of the Myke points.
Yes, that's true. That is true. So I will give 5. Federico, for some reason, is only giving 1. It seems like Federico's job is way harder. But all right, we should actually just finish up today by talking a little bit about iOS 11. Before we do that, let me take a moment to thank our final sponsor for this week, and that is Bombfell, the online personal styling service dedicated to finding the right clothes for you. If you out there are a modern man, you might like to streamline the most stressful parts of your life. I know I do. Well, Bombfell can help you do this because you can update your look with brand new items to refresh your wardrobe. When you sign up to Bombfell, you'll be paired with your own stylist. They will hand select items that they think will work for you personally. They will look through menswear collections around the world to help find the clothes that you're going to look great in. You only pay for what you keep and your returns are free. It is the smartest way to shop. Bombfell is completely flexible. You can push up, delay, or skip shipments at any time. Now, Mr. Stephen Hackett, I understand that you have been sent some Bombfell clothes. You worked with one of their stylists.
It's true. One of the items I wanted was a pair of shorts. I would say I'm moderately fashionable. I mean, I wear a podcast t-shirt every day to work, but good shorts have eluded me for years. And Bombfell hit it out of the park. My wife said some very nice things about me and my new shorts. So thumbs up there. Big thumbs up.
Was that all easy, like working with the stylist? Like, how did you find that experience?
Yeah, super easy. You go through, you pick some stuff that you like, pick some stuff you don't like. And I was a little nervous about it because I don't like shopping. I don't like talking to people. That interaction I'm very uncomfortable with, but Bombfell makes it really easy to do. And just no sweat at all. Super great.
We have an exclusive deal for Connected listeners. You can get $25 off your first purchase by visiting bombfell.com/connected. Signing up is really easy. You just tell them your measurements and the kind of clothes you like in a simple questionnaire. You'll get an email from your stylist with their hand-picked selections for you. You'll have 48 hours to make any changes to your items or even cancel them altogether. And then once your clothes arrive, you have 7 days before any payment is taken, so you can send back anything that you don't like. You're in total control. Bombfell also has the option for you to sign up on behalf of your partner as well, which is, I guess, a real good nudge to someone that you think that they need to get better clothes. It's time to upgrade your wardrobe and feel great in the clothes that you wear. Go to bombfell.com/connected. That is bombfell.com/connected for $25 off your first purchase. Bombfell. Open and clothes. I love that. Open and close. It's brilliant, right? That's such a good tagline. We thank Bombfell for their support of this show. When they sent that to me a couple of days ago, I was like, oh, someone had a good day. Open and close. Love it. iOS 11. I mean, I think it's fair to say this came across just through the word count discussion. It's an iPad release. Like, it's iPad. Like, there's a lot of cool things in here. But drag and drop, files, the dock, multitasking changes, all this amazing screenshot features, like all of the really great stuff either exists only on iPad or is best on iPad, right? Is that fair to say?
I think so. Especially, with the dock and the spaces and drag and drop between apps, I really do believe that the best features in iOS 11 are for the iPad. Yeah.
I mean, it's totally changed the way that I get my work done. I mean, I haven't spent actually any time with iOS 11 on an iPhone. But over the last 3 months on my iPad, even without the ability to use drag and drop in third-party apps, or even without the ability to use Files app for file providers, just the dock and all of the multitasking enhancements has just completely changed the way I get my work done.
When you get to the point where all of your apps are taking advantage of drag and drop, and we're gonna see those updates this week. It takes a few weeks, I think, to really get into it, but
hopefully quicker than Split for you.
Hopefully quicker than that, but you get into the point where now I expect to be able to use drag and drop everywhere. And when it does not work, that's a problem. And I assume that's going to be a problem, for example, with some Google apps, which we'll see if they ever get, these kind of updates within the iOS 11 release cycle.
Let's start the timer now.
Yeah.
Google Docs and Google Sheets. We're starting the timer now. How long is it going to take them to get drag and drop support? We'll see.
And I think, there's some aspects that I'm still not sure about, like Spaces could have been done a little bit better. Drag and drop can sometimes be a little like not so easily discoverable. And of course there's still the missing shelf. I really would have liked to see a shelf type feature for iPad drag and drop, but overall it's such an amazing release, and how it changes multitasking with the dock, like how you drag and you create a split view, you create slider over, and you move, you flick apps, back and forth. It going back to iOS 10 now feels super weird to me. I had to go back to take some screenshots, and I was like, how do I even open apps now? I have to go back to the home screen every single time. And so that change alone, you don't have to go back to the home screen for most of your interactions. That is such a major difference from iOS 10. There's also stuff on the iPhone. Siri Kit will be nice. I'm seeing a bunch of apps receive integration with Siri, especially if you have a note-taking app or a to-do list app. That's going to be nice. The design changes, I still don't understand what Apple is doing. They're not committed to a unified design yet. So we have the iOS 10 design, we have the iOS 11 design with the big bold headlines and the large titles, and then we have thicker icons, we have thinner icons. It still seems like there's two design schools within Apple, and one will have to eventually win over the other. We'll see. But on the iPhone is a nice release. I mean, ARKit will be awesome with third-party apps, but if you just take the OS itself, you install iOS 11 on iPhone and on an iPad, we can all agree that on the iPad, it's where you can see the biggest changes.
So, Stephen, I know you've been using it on your iPhone as well. Have you got any impression of the things that you like about iOS 11 on your phone?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you guys. It's an iPad-focused release. Some of the drag and drop stuff is nice within apps. It kind of makes reordering things within apps more uniform across the system, even though there's a little bit of a delay when you're going to pick the cell up and stuff. I think that being more similar across all my apps eventually will be nice. But yeah, it's not a huge game changer on the phone. I mean, there's niceties for sure. I like, for instance, having notes in Control Center, like that. It makes creating a new note very fast. I was very unsure of the Control Center design, but I've really come around to it once you kind of understand its system. But yeah, it's a fine iPhone release, but it's not groundbreaking by any means. But
yeah, I guess a lot of that stuff's still to come with third-party apps, and I'm really keen to see how, over the next couple of weeks, if and how our opinions change with AR. And I've tried a couple of AR apps, and on the whole, I find using AR apps on the iPad, because I've not tried any on my iPhone, to be a clunky experience because the screens are too big. I really think that mostly AR is probably going to shine on the iPhone. So I'm very keen to see how that goes as the next couple of weeks progress and more fun experiences for ARKit come out.
Yeah. It definitely seems like the release is setting the stage, and we're going to see what developers have planned. I think it will get better over time.
But it's not perfect. I mean, I have a couple of things that I know that bug other people, bug me, because one of the big ones, iPad multitasking is divisive.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why, because it's very different. It is a burn it to the ground and start over way of thinking of how multitasking works on the iPad. I find it better in almost every single way, personally, but I can see how and why some people are not enjoying it. But I think that it is a system that people should open up and try and get used to, and try and rethink your workflows, as frustrating as that can be, because if you really are able to embrace it, I think that it is a vastly superior system, a system that I wish we could have had last year. So the iOS 9 way of working would have only had half the time to embed its way into people's lives, but you get what you get. And just a couple of things. One I think is a bug that I think I might be seeing because I'm not on 11 everywhere yet, but I'm having some significant issues with notes and URLs where they kind of move around the document when I scroll. And
I have that running betas on all of my systems. That seems to be buggy for me.
And I'm really hoping that this is a thing that won't exist once everything's fully updated, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there is something weird. It seems to be saving like a link in two different places, but one of them's invisible, and
it's weird.
I have also had some data loss with notes a little bit, but again, they're beta, so I'm willing to accept that, and I'm going to see how that shakes out after I upgrade everything to be solid. And also, whilst drag and drop is great, it has made some interactions suck. Like if all you really want to do is copy a URL, it takes a really long time to wait for iOS to perform whatever it is, like to ensure that you're not dragging or dropping. And that I find that to be frustrating, because sometimes you can drag but you can't drop, right? Where you want to take something, you can't actually drop it there. And I find myself just pressing and holding for what is probably 5 to 6 seconds to wait for a pop-up to appear for me to copy a URL. I find that frustrating. I wish that there was maybe a way around this. I wish that Apple had maybe created some kind of area on the OS, which I think is something you mention in some places, Federico, where I would be able to just drop it and it just be copied to the clipboard.
I mean, like a visual clipboard system.
Yeah.
And a visual clipboard is basically a shelf, like an area where you don't have.
Bring up the shelf. Any opportunity to bring the shelf up, you'll bring it up.
This is what you're talking about. This is exactly what you're talking about. You want something.
No, because
want
the
to
shelf
copy it.
requires a drop point, right? But my point is not everywhere.
It doesn't have to be fixed on screen. It doesn't have to be like. Don't think about my design. Think about the idea of somewhere where it's there and it's easy to do, and you don't have to perform these long gestures. You just pick up something and throw it out there, and then it's either copied or directly, and it's also saved for later. It's just there has to be a system where, like, don't think about the design details of it, but there needs to be a system that allows you to copy stuff quickly and easily. And right now, unless you do the long gesture, or unless you know exactly where you want to drop something, that's not possible. So there has to be a solution. And call it a shelf, call it the new clipboard, call it something else. But the basic idea, I think you're exactly right. That's one of the examples of why we need such a system.
Should we talk about some of the apps that are coming out? Some of the stuff that we've tried in beta periods and stuff like that. I mean, I think the biggest one for me, the one that I'm maybe the most excited about from a working perspective, is the Dropbox update with file support. I am both surprised and thrilled about the fact that this is available day one. The ability to be able to have all of my files in Dropbox in the Files app. I'm so excited about this. And I know it's going to just make some huge changes to the way that I get my work done. To be able to access everything so simply, from everywhere, and it will be natively built into the system with the ability to set like favorites of folders and have them all in one view. Like I've barely played around with files, but it's been so great for me to be able to have a better view into iCloud Drive to save documents temporarily in a place. Like if I'm just sending a contract to someone that doesn't need to be filed yet, but it just needs to be sent for their signature, being able to save that stuff to iCloud Drive as just like a temporary storage place has been fantastic. The ability to be able to save and access from Dropbox, it's going to change the way that I get my work done. And I'm just over the moon that they have gone to the lengths that they have gone to support at day one with the power and flexibility that they have done. I'm really, really, really excited. And I'm going to thank Eddie Q for making that deal happen.
That's not that.
Yep.
No.
I'm going to thank Eddie. Thanks, Eddie. I know it was Eddie.
Yeah.
I know it.
We're gonna have to see how that works. I'm a bit skeptical on the file provider extensions.
Why are you telling me this now?
It's actually in the review. In the conclusion of that part.
I read that one a long time ago, man. I remember.
We'll have to see how this cloud service stuff works, because the file provider extension type was designed for cloud services. So stuff that uploads, stuff that downloads. But during the summer, I wasn't able to test any of this. So a lot of developers have sort of hacked their way around file providers by making local file providers. So like local storage locations on iOS. I haven't been able to test Dropbox or Google Drive or Adobe Creative Cloud or, something else. So I don't know how well it works. I do know that developers don't have a lot of freedom when it comes to customizing the UI, for example. They only have limited custom actions that they can put into the files interface. They cannot present like the basic UI, the file manager UI is the same of iCloud Drive. So don't expect Dropbox to be able to add badges to folders or stuff like that. I don't know how much they can, and if they're willing to customize every single aspect of the limited integrations that they have. And also, is this upload and download stuff going to be reliable? If you save something from Safari with the files extension into Dropbox as a location in files, does the change propagate when you save from the extension, or do you have to open files first and then the change uploads to your account? How does it deal with reconciling changes and conflicted copies? How many? I assume we're going to see a lot of these companies explain, if you want to use these more in-depth features, you need to open the main Dropbox or Google Drive app. If you want to just see your files and just share them, you can go into Files, the app by Apple.
Yeah, maybe if that's the case, Dropbox isn't saying it, right? Like currently. They're not saying it. There's no addendums in their post. It's just like access everything throughout iOS. And I'm having faith on it because, so as I stand here right now, in the idea that because these companies, especially like including Dropbox, were announced as of WWDC time, I like to believe that Apple worked with them to try and make sure that this stuff could be best implemented to support and serve everybody's needs. That is my hope in this.
I hope so too, yeah.
But it's also the first version of it, and if this one kind of sucks, I'm going to assume it will get better later. And even if I just have very basic support, it's better than the support I currently have. Like I've lived for a long time with just accessing, with being able to access and getting used to accessing my Dropbox files through the Dropbox app. If that works as it always did, fine. And if I also get better access to things throughout the system, even better.
Yeah, that is true.
I've tried a couple of AR apps so far, and on the whole, none of them should necessarily be AR applications. The one I've had the most experience with is PCalc, because James Thompson is a
mad
scientist.
Mad scientist.
Yeah, he's a mad scientist, and he's created my favorite AR experience inside of my calculator app. It's just a weird toy box.
Yeah, I spent a long time trying to get the car to go through the hoop. That's all you need to know, right? Like it's a calculator.
I've done it.
Yeah, I can't do it, but so I just throw bananas that are on fire at it instead, and it makes me happy.
Something that might help you is you can attach a Bluetooth gaming pad to it. That might help.
I bought one of those.
You can drive the car in the about screen via the Bluetooth gaming pads for the Apple TV or whatever.
I love James Thompson.
He is wonderful,
so
and he's built just a fantastic thing. And the about screen of PCalc is the most advanced about screen probably ever created, and it's just full of a bunch of stuff that shouldn't be in a calculator app, but it's awesome that it is. Carrot Weather has a really fun AR mode, which is just a fun little demo too, really, where it can show you a bunch of weather features in a fun little futuristic space age UI anywhere you point your phone. It's really nice. I like it. It's a very nice little animation, and it brings into it a lot of the fun that is in Carrot Weather in a new and interesting way. So that's another one that I've tried. And I've also tried an app called Measure Kit, which I know, Federico, that you've had quite a bit of experience with.
Yeah. It's an AR app that allows you to measure stuff with a bunch of different tools. So you have like a ruler, you have another tool to measure angles. You can measure a person's height. And all of this is done using an ARKit. It recognizes flat surfaces like the ground floor or tables and desks. Doesn't work. It has limited support for vertical surfaces like walls, because ARKit by default doesn't support walls, only horizontal planes. And it's really impressive the way that it allows you to measure things. So some tools are more accurate than others. The ruler one, in my experience, is really, really accurate down to the half centimeter in my experience. The person's height tends to be off by a couple of, I would say, by 2 to 5 centimeters in my tests, which doesn't make it, if your doctor asks for your height, you shouldn't give them the height measured by an ARKit application.
I'm only ever going to in the future, though. I just want everyone, like, if my doctor's listening, this is the only way I'm ever measuring myself now with my iPhone.
Yeah, you really shouldn't do that.
No,
but it makes for it makes for a fun demo. Every couple of days I would ask Sylvia to come into the room where I was working and be like, "Hey, stand still. I need to measure your height."
Perfect.
So the problem is she's already tiny, and Measure Kit would decrease her height by 5 centimeters. So she got really upset, because she's like, I'm already tiny. I'm not as tall as you, and this is not fair because your app is telling you even a smaller amount of centimeters. So that was both funny and sad. But it's really impressive. I think for measuring furniture and stuff, it really does come in handy. I'm gonna use this and the IKEA app. I haven't been able to try, but I assume between MeasureKit and IKEA, shopping for furniture and new house items should be a lot easier in the future.
Todoist has been updated with Siri Kit and drag and drop. What does that mean for Todoist users?
Siri Kit, you can now ask Siri to create new tasks and to give you an overview by using either like with Todoist or in Todoist at the end of a command. That is unfortunately one of the downsides of Apple's system that doesn't let you assign different defaults. You cannot say, like, instead of using Apple reminders, I want to use Todoist for my reminders. No, you cannot do that. So you have to specify the name of the app at the end or the beginning of your request. With drag and drop, in my experience, that works quite well. The Todoist folks have done a good job of working around the quirks of Siri. So it depends on your language, I guess. It depends on how you structure a sentence sometimes. Overall, it's not terrible. It works quite well. And drag and drop, now you can drop text, you can drop files, you can drop links from Safari, and either you create a new task in the inbox or in a project, or you drop these items into an existing task, into the detail view, the comment view. You attach a file, you attach a comment, stuff like that. It works quite well. It's not as rich I would say Todoist, both with SiriKit and drag and drop, it's not as rich as OmniFocus, which is a richer implementation of SiriKit commands. For example, you can complete tasks with Siri and OmniFocus. You can search for tasks, I think. And also drag and drop is a bit richer in OmniFocus. You can do more things. You can drop more types of items in different views. It's done a bit better.
Airmail is one that I wanted to mention. Airmail has support for drag and drop, which was my email client. So you can drag messages out. So far, of the applications that I've been able to drop messages into, like, so this is something that's just amazing. If I drag an email message out of Airmail and drop it into Notes, it creates a PDF and drops it into the document, which is incredible, because that has done something that I'm expecting a lot of this stuff will do over time. That's reduced workflow that I need. I very frequently take travel documents, and I will trigger off a workflow, but now I don't need to do that. So if I book 2 flights and a hotel, I will have to sit and do my workflow in every single one of those. But now I can just pick up 3 emails, drag them into my new travel note, and drop them all in, and it will create PDFs of them all. It's really awesome.
By default, it creates a PDF?
That's what it does in Notes. I don't know what happens if you drag it into to my to-do app, because I've not been able to try that yet. I can tell you in a moment while you tell me about the next app. I can try that.
Yeah, that is debatable, and we'll revise that as we do iOS 11 follow-up, because I want to get into more detail about this drag and drop stuff works. You can read in the review, and you can listen to Myke's section of the review. There's some things we'll have to see how developers implement them. I want to mention Working Copy, which is the GitHub client that we use at Mac Stories to organize our text files and collaborate on drafts. And the developer Anders Borum, he shipped this iOS 11 integration with drag and drop on the iPad. You can now, for example, drop files into a repository in GitHub, and you can take a folder from Working Copy, and you can drop it into Textastic, which is a text editor for iOS, also updated for iOS 11. And when you drop the folder, it will basically create a bookmark to the folder. And so every change you make in Working Copy, after you drop a folder in Textastic, those changes will be reflected in there. So that's really nice. And I also want to mention DevonThink, which is one of the apps that I've used over the summer to organize my research material. They now have this integration with SiriKit that allows you to create a new note in DevonThink. You can say, hey, create a note. I won't say the command because, maybe it's a problem for people. Create a note in DevonThink saying, I need to listen to Myke's podcasts. And then you can add a note with the title. You can add text to a note. You can. I'm not sure whether DevonThink supports this yet, but SiriKit in iOS 11 also lets you append text to the bottom of a note. But I'm not sure DevonThink supports it. And also you can now drag and drop stuff. So you can rearrange files in DevonThink, or you can drop in from Safari or Mail or Photos. And it's a great way to organize a DevonThink database using drag and drop on the iPad.
So dragging a message from Airmail into Todoist creates a message link.
Yeah, I thought so. It's the way that Myke, you read this. It's the way that they deal with the different flavors of items dragged. I want to talk about this
personally. That is the two things I would want to happen. If I'm dragging a message into Notes, I want it to create a PDF. If I'm dragging a message into Todoist,
that's debatable.
No, I'm not saying. No, it's not debatable because it's the way I want it to work. It might not be the way you want it to work, but I specifically said it's the way I want it to work. That's what I want.
I just want to open a discussion of how the Airmail folks decided when the user drags a message and drops it into Notes, it should be a PDF. But should it be a PDF? What if I want it to be a link like it is in Todoist?
Did they make that decision though? Isn't it
yes.
Wouldn't Notes be asking for the PDF over the URL?
Well, it's the two of them. The Airmail developers put the PDF format first in the list of provided types. And Notes goes to look for all the formats, and if the PDF is first and Notes assumes, well, I gotta take this PDF, it takes the PDF. So it's a two-way street. And as I wonder in the review, I want to see how developers come up with a mutually agreed upon standard of like, if I want to have the subject of the email as a hyperlink, I know that is possible. So should there be a preference in the app that I'm using to say, hey, do you want to save email messages as links or PDFs? And how complex does that get when you have to specify a format for every single type? So I just wonder how this can be done effectively. And, I just wonder if it maybe creates some confusion. I don't know. It's too early. We need to see how this scales with like a dozen of apps instead
This
of
is the right
5
way
of
to
them.
do it for now, to not
For
have
now,
users
yes.
choose. But you're right. We just need to see how it scales. So we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few weeks, you're going to hear us talk tons more about more and more iOS apps as they come out. But I think that for today, we should wrap it up. Federico, where can people go to get the Mac Stories review?
They can go to macstories.net.
It will be right there.
Pinned. It's right there on the homepage. It's featured at the top. It's going to be pinned to the front page for a few days.
Of course, in our show notes as well, relay.fm/connected/160.
They can also go to my Twitter profile, and they will see the tweet pinned at the top of my profile if they open it on the web or on the official Twitter app. So it's going to be to the top of all of our most important pages for a few days.
All right. Thanks again to our sponsors this week, the fine folk over at Squarespace, FreshBooks, and Bombfell. If you want to find Steven's work online, he's at 512pixels.net, and he is at ISMH. Federico is on Twitter. He is at Viticci, Viticci. I am at Myke, IMYKE. Thank you so much for listening to this week's special episode of Connected. We'll be back next time. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.